Tonight at 10, we've got all the local election results and analysis.
And we're live outside Westminster Abbey on the eve of the King's coronation.
These are our top stories. Labour make big gains at the polls from Swindon to Stoke to Medway as the Conservatives endure a bruising election.
These are the key battlegrounds as we go into the next election, and make no mistake, this means that we are on course for a Labour majority at the next election.
Dejection for the Conservatives, who saw a collapse in support right across England, but the Prime Minister says he's sticking to his agenda.
The message I am hearing from people tonight is that they want us to focus on their priorities and they want us to deliver for them. And that's about halving inflation, growing the economy, reducing debt, cutting waiting lists and stopping the boats.
So what could the results mean for a general election? We'll have all the analysis.
Meanwhile, here at Westminster Abbey, the final preparations have been made for the first coronation in 70 years. The King and the Prince and Princess of Wales made a surprise visit to chat to well-wishers on the Mall. Some people have been camping out for days to get a prime view of tomorrow's royal procession.
I don't think too many people will have been to two coronations. I was here 70 years ago for the Queen's coronation.
And the stage is set. We get the first glimpse from inside the Abbey, readied for the morning ceremony.
On BBC London, scary and surreal. We speak to a passenger caught in the chaos at Clapham Common Station this evening after smoke enters carriages. Luckily, no one was injured.
Good evening. We start tonight with the local elections in England and the Conservatives falling well behind Labour, losing more than 1,000 councillors. Rishi Sunak says the results are disappointing but insists he'll carry on with his agenda, while Sir Keir Starmer claims his party is on course to win the next general election. Labour have taken control of councils in Swindon, East Staffordshire, Stoke-on-Trent and Medway. Now, with most of the results in and declared, this was the position of the three main parties a few minutes ago. Labour are the big winners with more than 2,600 councillors, up by more than 500. The Tories have fewer than 2,300, down by more than 1,000, and the Lib Dems have more than 1,600, up more than 400. Now, it means of the councils up for grabs, Labour now controls 71, the Conservatives 32 and the Lib Dems 29. There are 89 councils with no overall majority. And if all of Britain had voted today, following a similar pattern, then the BBC predicts the share of votes to each party would look something like this, with Labour on 35%, the Conservatives on 26% and the Lib Dems on 20%. Others have 19%. So let's get the very latest now and join our political editor, Chris Mason, who's live at Westminster for us tonight. Chris, over to you.
Clive, it was a long night, a long day, little sleep and lots to digest. We've just passed the 24-hour mark from polls closing and the counting is almost complete. 227 councils have now declared. There are just 3 still to come doing their number crunching. First and foremost, this matters because it may mean that where you are, those providing the key local services that you rely on are provided by different people or a different blend of people. But the big picture tonight looks like this. It is bleak for the Conservatives. It's great for the Liberal Democrats and the Greens in the areas that they have focused on. And Labour are chipper. They think today suggests that they could win the next general election with a majority. But there are some who think they're perhaps not doing quite enough. You can measure elections in numbers. You can measure them in where the smiles and cheers are too. The Labour leader Keir Starmer was in Chatham in Kent this morning, where Labour took control of the council from the Conservatives.
You've done an absolutely stunning job here. You didn't just get it over the line, you blew the doors off. Make no mistake, we are on course for a Labour majority at the next general election.
Look and listen to the contrast. Silent and solitary. The Prime Minister delivering bacon sandwiches to party staff and insisting he's not changing course.
I'm not detecting any massive groundswell of movement towards the Labour Party or excitement for their agenda. What people want us to do is focus on their priorities. Halving inflation, growing the economy, reducing debt, cutting waiting lists and stopping the boats. Those are the country's priorities, those are this government's priorities, and that's what we're going to deliver.
The Liberal Democrats are making something of an art form out of less than subtle campaign props.
3, 2, 1.
This, their latest, as party leader Ed Davey celebrated taking Windsor and Maidenhead in Berkshire from the Tories.
I'm so proud that when Katy Perry and Lionel Richie enter Windsor Castle for the Coronation concert on Sunday, they'll be going into a ward that's represented by 3 brand new Liberal Democrat councillors. Well, let's go back and work even harder so we can beat the Conservatives at the next general election.
Labour took East Staffordshire and tonight Amber Valley in Derbyshire from the Conservatives. And here they are doing the same in Swindon, a key general election battleground. Could time be up for this former Cabinet Minister, local Tory MP Robert Buckland? Stoke-on-Trent is such a highly contested political spot. People there can barely pop out for the groceries without being accosted by someone after their vote. No one party ran the council here until today. Now Labour do. And 250 miles down the road in Plymouth, a similar picture. Labour winning in the kind of places that help determine who ends up running the country. The problem the Conservatives have faced is a range of competitive opponents. The Liberal Democrats appear to have finally banished the baggage of their years in coalition government, beating the Tories not just here in Windsor, but in the Midlands, in Stratford-on-Avon, and in and around Totnes in Devon, and Chichester in West Sussex, among others. This was the Green Party's best ever set of local election results. For the first time in England, they've secured a majority on a council.
What a brilliant result so far.
They'll run the local authority in mid-Suffolk. They made big advances in East Suffolk, came from almost nowhere to become the biggest party in East Hertfordshire, and contributed to a total wipeout of Conservatives in Lewes in East Sussex.
We're seeing record Green wins in rural and urban areas from Labour and from the Conservatives. People looking at the other parties feeling disillusioned by the government, uninspired by Labour, and voting for Green councillors in ever greater numbers.
So what could all of this mean for who might be in power here at Westminster after the next general election expected next year? From where we are right now, it seems that neither the Conservatives nor Labour can be super confident that they would win a majority. Labour claim that they are well placed because they are winning over voters in places that they need to, as opposed to stacking up votes in places where they're already ahead. And where does it leave the Tories? Jittery. And yes, a spot of Conservative sniping, primarily in private for now, has begun.
Was it a disastrous night for the Conservatives, Prime Minister?
Little wonder, perhaps, the Prime Minister is finding comfort and distraction from the election aftermath by focusing on the international stage, welcoming world leaders to Downing Street ahead of the coronation tomorrow. Chris Mason, BBC News at Westminster.
OK, let's take a closer look at some of the results now. As Chris was saying in his report, Labour took Stoke, a key target, come the next general election. They won a massive 29 of the 44 seats available there, up 14. There was no change there for the Conservatives. In Windsor and Maidenhead, it's the Liberal Democrats who are celebrating tonight. After taking control from the Conservatives, winning just over half the seats, they gained 13 while the Tories lost 16. And in mid-Suffolk, it's the Greens who make history, taking control of a council for the first time. They won 24 of the 34 seats available, doubling their tally from the last election. Here's Professor Sir John Curtis with his assessment on what the results all mean.
The results are certainly deeply disappointing for the Conservatives. They may well be heading for something close to the 1,000 seat losses they were hoping to avoid. And certainly their share of the vote is down a couple of points on even Theresa May's very poor performance back in May 2019. Labour, in contrast, much more encouraging. They've got the biggest lead over the Conservatives in terms of votes at any point since 2010, though their own share of the vote was in fact no better than what they achieved last year. And that will be something of a disappointment for them. Would Labour have won a general election if it had been held on Thursday? Well, maybe they might have just got an overall majority. None of us can be sure, and I certainly think that Labour would hope to be much further ahead of the Conservatives in the event that the general election does finally come around.
Professor Sir John Curtis. Well, as we've been hearing, one of Labour's biggest victories was in Medway in Kent, which the Conservatives had controlled for more than 20 years. Labour won 33 of its 59 seats. That's up 11, with the Tories losing 13. Our political correspondent Ben Wright has spent the day in Medway talking to voters about the issues most important to them.
The Medway towns revel in their connection to the novelist Charles Dickens. Labour had high hopes here, and the result has given the party a story to celebrate, seizing control of the council from the Conservatives for the first time in 20 years. In Rochester, I dropped into Georgia's florists. She switched her vote from Conservative to Labour.
You know, everyone's struggling, aren't they? There's so much unhappiness and everyone's struggling to feed their children and put clothes on their backs and things like that. And we needed more help.
And do you think that explains the shift here to Labour?
I think so, yes. Personally, Labour sort of seemed to be promising things that would help us in the future.
But are you going to stick with them at the general election, or is your vote still up for grabs?
I think my vote's still up for grabs.
Medway voted strongly for Brexit and has 3 Conservative MPs. But these elections suggest that support for the Tories could be cracking.
We voted for Brexit, but now something we do regret. I think we've been misled on that one as well. The country, I think, has just come to a bit of a standstill in general. We need to speak out now before there is a general election and let the government know how we feel.
I personally think they've had their day and it's time for a change.
Yeah, I think they've lost our votes.
Yeah.
As she put out her bunting, Julie told me she had voted for her local Conservative councillor.
This is very much a local issue for me. I've no idea how I'll vote next year. I like Rishi Sunak, didn't like Boris. I'm hoping that they'll do a good job, but I think they don't do themselves any favours at all the scandals and everything, so I think it puts doubts in people's minds.
Sir Keir Starmer came to Chatham at the start of the campaign, and he's celebrating here today. This corner of Kent hasn't shown any enthusiasm for Labour since the days of Tony Blair, but Sir Keir hopes that he's found a winning message that can sink the Conservatives at the general election here in Medway and beyond. But it's a Labour message that didn't hit the right note for Jenny, who I met at a mother's singing group in Gillingham. She voted Green.
I felt like Conservatives and Labour's had a bit of the same message. Local communities, they are on their knees in Medway and they need improvement before more houses get built.
Are you decided how you're going to vote at the general election?
No, not yet.
These are hard times for the Tories, and the success of opposition parties across England shows the scale of challenge facing the Conservatives as the general election gets close. Ben Wright, BBC News in Rochester.
We're going to get a final word now from Chris Mason, who's live at Westminster. Chris, the Conservatives had suggested losing around 1,000 councillors would suggest a lousy election for them. How are they feeling tonight?
I think it was worse than lousy for them. It was grim. There is just no doubt about that, looking at the numbers. Now, those around Rishi Sunak claim that it would have been much, much worse without him, but the recriminations are beginning. Let me give you a little trip inside my notebook, courtesy of a phone call that I took in the middle of this afternoon. This came from a figure loyal to the former Prime Ministers, Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, and this is what I was told. Rishi has no option but to own these results. He was the Chancellor who presided over the stagnation of the British economy and hiked taxes to the highest level in 70 years. Little wonder so many previous Conservative voters have deserted us. yesterday. Now, we should say, we should calibrate this kind of thing. These are not critics within the party who are leaping in front of the cameras, and there's no appetite that I can detect within the Conservative Party for insurrection, for civil war, for chaos, for the toppling of Rishi Sunak. But it gives you some sense of the conversations going on within the Tory fold. What about the big picture as far as politics is concerned? It is hyper-competitive and so not definitive. And the general election, you know, is still quite a long way off.
All right, Chris, thank you. Chris Mason there, live at Westminster. Now, the head of the World Health Organization has declared the global COVID-19 emergency is over. Our medical editor, Fergus Walsh, is here. People are still dying, though.
They absolutely are. I think this is largely a symbolic moment, a recognition that COVID is not the global threat it once was. The death rate has plummeted thanks to a combination of very effective vaccines, effective at preventing severe illness, not effective at preventing people from getting COVID, and so many of us have had COVID at least once or twice. Now, it doesn't mean to say we're not going to get some new troubling variant at some point. Omicron has been dominant for such a long time, and it doesn't mean the pandemic is over. COVID, I'm afraid, is here to stay, and it remains a threat to some, especially the over 75s and those with a weakened immune system who are being urged to have their spring COVID booster jab. The WHO says it's not a time for complacency, but perhaps to reflect on the global death toll from this pandemic, which is put at 20 million people.
OK, Fergus, many thanks. Fergus Walsh there. Now, thousands of people have been gathering along the procession route in central London on this, the eve of the coronation of King Charles III. Let's join my colleague Jane Hill outside Westminster Abbey, where tomorrow's historic ceremony will be taking place. Good evening, Jane.
Clive, thank you so much. Yes, welcome to Westminster Abbey tonight, where we are just a matter of hours from the coronation of King Charles III. The stage inside the Abbey has now been set. Visitors and special guests from around the world have been arriving in London throughout the day. Thousands of people have come to the capital for the event. And a little earlier this afternoon, the King was joined by the Prince and Princess of Wales. And they went on a surprise walkabout on the Mall to meet some of the well-wishers gathered there. Our first report is from our royal correspondent, Nicholas Witchell.
Standing in front of the high altar of this ancient abbey, a sight which hasn't been seen for 70 years. The 700-year-old coronation chair, complete with Scotland's Stone of Destiny underneath it. The chair upon which kings and queens have been crowned across the centuries, and where tomorrow Charles III will be consecrated in an act of Christian worship dating back 1,000 years. London is ready. Many have already made their way to the processional route to bag their places. And this afternoon, they had a visit from the King. On the other side of the Mall, William was preoccupied with the weather.
Thank you. I'm praying a bit of sunshine stays out, keep you all dry.
Catherine with the children, and Prince George's role as a page boy.
They're really well, thank you.
Very excited.
Excited, a bit nervous, obviously with a big day ahead, but no, they can't wait.
VIP guests are arriving in London. Prime Ministers from the 14 other countries which have the British monarch as their head of state were at Buckingham Palace. Several of them are committed Republicans, but this really wasn't the moment for that kind of a discussion. Instead, from Prince William...
We're praying for the weather tomorrow. We need a bit of sunshine tomorrow.
And here's why the weather is on everyone's mind. This was Westminster Abbey for a period this morning. A little earlier, the King and Queen Consort had arrived for a full dress rehearsal, a run-through of all the elements of the service. And it's one of those elements, the homage of the people, which continues to cause comment. Jonathan Dimbleby is a long-standing friend of the King from his days as Prince of Wales. He believes the homage, where the public is invited to swear allegiance to the King, is misguided.
I can think of nothing that he would find more abhorrent. He's never wanted to be revered. He's never wanted, so far as I know, to have anyone pay homage to him except in mock terms as a joke.
Buckingham Palace said Mr Dimbleby was speaking on his own account. In a lighter vein, a surprise for travellers.
My wife and I wish you and your families a wonderful coronation weekend.
Wherever you are travelling, we hope you have a safe and pleasant journey.
Rail passengers are hearing some familiar voices over the public address system.
And remember, please mind the gap.
From Kensington Palace tonight, a photograph of the Princess of Wales with the First Ladies of the United States of America and Ukraine. Ceremonial London is dressed and Coronation Day awaits. Tonight there will be many thousands bedding down on the Mall and elsewhere who will be echoing Prince William's hope that tomorrow won't be too wet. Nicholas Witchell, BBC News.
Well, we'll hear from some of those people in the next few minutes. But of course, this is the first coronation for 70 years. Let's just take a look at the main events that are happening across this bank holiday weekend. Formal celebrations begin with a procession setting off from Buckingham Palace at 10:20 to go to Westminster Abbey. King Charles will enter the Abbey through the Great West Door at 11. At 2:30, the royal family will be on the palace balcony for a fly-past involving members of the Army, Royal Navy and Royal Air Force, and culminating in a display by the Red Arrows. On Sunday, communities across the UK are invited to share food and fun as part of the Coronation Big Lunch. And then at 8 o'clock on Sunday evening is the Coronation Concert at Windsor Castle. Then on Bank Holiday Monday, members of the public are invited to take part in the Big Help Out, which aims to raise awareness of volunteering around the country. Well, that's just some of what's happening this weekend. As we've been reflecting, followers of the royal family have been camping out near Buckingham Palace, some of them for many days, in fact, keen for the very best spot from which to watch tomorrow's events. And goodness, what weather they have been contending with. Our correspondent Ashley John-Baptiste has spent today with people out on the Mall, and he is there for us now tonight. Ashley.
Yes, well, I have been outside here at Buckingham Palace since this morning, and the sense of anticipation among royal fans really has been a constant throughout the day. And for those camping, getting ready for the night, sitting out, well, there is still a buzz. I have spoken to people from different walks of life in generations, all united in their support for the King. Among the tents, decorations and crowds, a family of royal supporters spanning 3 generations.
I don't think too many people will have been to 2 coronations. I was here 70 years ago for the Queen's coronation.
It's just an amazing experience, really, being here with Grandma, who was obviously here for the coronation many years ago.
And it's not just families here, new friendships are being formed. So you guys have just met, is that right?
Yeah, well, she came up last night with her tin, and you can't help but just make friends, you know. It's a really cool social time to be together, to meet different people, so it's fun.
Absolutely.
Outside Buckingham Palace this afternoon, a surprise appearance. The man they've all been waiting for, His Majesty the King, taking a walk along the Mall to greet some of the royal fans. What a surprise.
And no one wasn't sure how we were going to feel, but I feel as proud now as I did when we buried the Queen. So.
Did you get a handshake?
I did, and it was just like amazing. I can't get over it.
Here with us all. Are you feeling okay?
And this was the moment when the Princess of Wales spoke to a fan on the phone who couldn't be there in person.
Do. Well, come and say hi to Julie when you're back over here, but I hope you get better soon.
I will.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
We feel we've got a good spot for tomorrow.
With a long night ahead, some are more prepared than others. Are you camping out?
We are camping out, but not in a tent. We've just got our chairs.
You're camping out with just chairs?
Just
it's a very comfy chair.
The build-up to tomorrow isn't being felt just here. At this school in Londonderry, the celebrations are well underway.
We're like really excited for the King's coronation.
I think it'll be amazing, and I'm really excited for it.
And at this Hindu temple in Leicester, final preparations for a multi-faith service that takes place tomorrow to mark the coronation.
And we just want to sing for the King tomorrow, play instruments for the King, so it'll be lovely. It's going to be a lovely get-together with all faith communities.
This pub in Hull was once used to try and bring down the monarchy, but punters today are not plotting against King Charles.
I'll be at work probably. Yeah, I'll be just like serving everyone all their beer and just having a good time with everyone, helping celebrate.
I'm going fishing just to be on my own.
But there are thousands bedding down on the Mall tonight who do want to catch a glimpse of the King. Ashley John-Baptiste, BBC News.
Well, meanwhile, world leaders, foreign royals and other overseas dignitaries have been at Buckingham Palace tonight for a reception. And earlier today, the King met Commonwealth leaders. Our diplomatic correspondent James Landale looks at who's attending the coronation, who isn't, and some of the diplomatic sensitivities involved.
3, 2, 1.
Coronations may be grand ceremony, but they're also a chance for high diplomacy. Today, the King met Commonwealth leaders all together for the first time in his reign. In Downing Street, they rolled out the red carpet so the Prime Minister could have a few meetings of his own. But this was perhaps the most important conversation between the Foreign Secretary and China's Vice President. Han Zheng, here to represent President Xi, used to run China's policy on Hong Kong, where new security laws prompted riots as people resisted a crackdown on their rights and freedoms. The Foreign Secretary said he raised areas of deep disagreement, including Hong Kong, but he also talked about vital cooperation over trade and climate change. But for Hong Kong citizens in Britain, there was disappointment at Mr. Han's presence.
He is representing the political terror of the Chinese Communist Party. So inviting him to this really special occasion that could bring a lot of trauma, and to some extent, to some Hong Kong people, they would see it as an insult to the community.
All heads of state got an invitation, except those with whom Britain has poor diplomatic relations. So not invited were the leaders of Russia, Belarus, Iran, Myanmar, Syria, Afghanistan and Venezuela. The US President has declined his invitation. His wife, Dr. Jill Biden, is here in his stead. But Buckingham Palace says about 100 heads of state have agreed to come. This is Church House, just around the corner from the Abbey. And tomorrow this is going to become a kind of grand VIP waiting room where world leaders gather before and after the service. They'll have privacy, coffee and time on their hands. Perfect conditions for a spot of light diplomacy. Which is normally what he does.
Where have you come from?
Today, the Foreign Secretary's staff filmed him pretending to be a TV reporter.
Well done, you may go.
Let's hope he returns to the day job tomorrow. James Landale, BBC News.
Well, tomorrow's events will bring back memories for those who played a part in the last coronation of Queen Elizabeth II in 1953. Our royal correspondent Daniela Relf has been talking to 3 people who were there 70 years ago.
Memories may fade, but some never lose their lustre. Gavin Ross was a scholar at Westminster School 70 years ago. It was the scholar's job to deliver the Vivat Regina, the musical anthem to welcome the monarch.
So we were high up and the Queen arrived a little early in the music, so she'd already got quite a way in before we shouted Vivat. We knew we were privileged, but being young boys, we had plenty of other things to do, and it didn't sort of hit us so much that we were uniquely privileged.
This is your amazing scrapbook, Eve, where you've kept...
As well as the sound, the look of the coronation mattered too. Eve Morris was a 17-year-old apprentice for designer Norman Hartnell, who made the Queen's coronation gown. Her scrapbook is rich in detail. Designs, fabrics, and the letter with instructions for the big day.
Please take sandwiches with you and a thermos flask, as coffee will not be available.
Eve's job was inside the Abbey, a needle and thread in her pocket, ready for any emergency repairs.
I was living at home at the time, I was only 17. I was still at home, and none of the family had cars, So the baker had to take me to the railway station to get me to the train. I can remember seeing the Queen come virtually past me where I was standing, quite close to me, catching her eye as she went by, quite close. I had a better seat than a lot of the seats in the Abbey.
91 years old and still playing. Now a Chelsea pensioner, Basil King was amongst the crowds lining the procession route on Coronation Day as a trumpeter with the band of the Royal Military School of Music.
There was excitement around, but I felt, just me, I suppose, a little bit proud that I'd been on such an occasion. I mean, I was only one out of thousands, but you know, the lads in the band, all those from the School of Music, they were all the same sort of mind. It's been a great day, even apart from the weather.
Universally modest about their contributions, they will all be watching closely tomorrow. Daniela Ralph, BBC News.
Goodness, remarkable. Well, let's get some final thoughts from our royal correspondent, Nicholas Witchell. And of course, this country is very different to what it was 70 years ago, Nick. So I wonder what tomorrow's ceremony here is going to mean to people in 2023.
Absolutely. It is remarkable to think that the first coronation that took place over there in an earlier Westminster Abbey was in 1066 for William the Conqueror. That antiquity gives it power, makes it special. But I think it does beg the question, will this work in 2023? Will this cut through to the Britain of today? Will we appreciate the rituals that we will see tomorrow? We remember that this is an act of worship, a Christian act of worship in a Christian setting. It is the consecration of a monarch, the setting apart of the monarch to a life of service. There will be more inclusivity, women priests taking part, more diversity, how important that is to the king. But the diversity is quite subtle, though of course heartfelt. And then this new element, the homage of the people. Nobody's quite sure who thought that up. We'll have to listen out to see how the Archbishop introduces it. But that is only one element in a 2-hour service.
All right, Nick Witchell, for now, thank you very much. And crucially, we must, of course, find out what the weather has in store wherever you are in the country. Let's find out from Darren Bett. Darren.
Hello there, Jane. First thing I'll say is don't blame the messenger. This was the Mall earlier this evening after the downpours cleared away. Temperatures in central London reached 20 degrees today. Tomorrow, it's going to be quite a few degrees cooler. There's going to be a lot of cloud and there'll be a bit of rain from time to time. Now, we did have a lot of thunderstorms earlier on across England and Wales in particular. More recently, they have been drifting into the east of England, but they are decaying, they are fading away. And but for 1 or 2 showers across southern Scotland and Northern Ireland, it should become dry. However, the rain comes across the channel into the far southwest of England by the end of the night. And we start with temperatures typically around 8 or 9 degrees tomorrow. So these outbreaks of rain push their way northwards across southern England into parts of Wales, the Midlands, eventually into East Anglia and also Lincolnshire. Further north, northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, see some sunshine but some sharp showers as well. In the sunshine, temperatures could reach 17 or 18 degrees. Under the cloud and rain, temperatures nearer 14 or 15. It does become dry overnight tomorrow night. We'll see some sunny spells on Sunday, but there will be a few more showers breaking out, drifting their way across Scotland into eastern parts of England. Further west, it does look somewhat drier. And it may be a bit warmer, actually, if you are planning a picnic. Temperatures peaking in the southeast at 19 or 20 degrees. But there is more rain to come. We've got another weather front sweeping in from the Atlantic. That will bring some rain during the evening and overnight in time for Bank Holiday Monday. So a cloudy, wet start. The worst of the rain may push through, but we will see showers following on behind. These could be heavy and thundery and temperatures of 16 to 18 degrees. Back to you, Jane.
Darren, thank you very much. And that is all from the 10 o'clock news team here tonight at Westminster Abbey on the eve of the coronation of King Charles III. Now, time for the news from wherever you are tonight. From here at the Abbey, good night.